Dave Barry here with National Recruiting Director Adam Gorney. Big news over the weekend out of Gainesville. Adam, Florida, has parted ways with head coach Dan Mullen. Adam, were you surprised by this news, and what are you hearing about all of what went into the decision?
No, it definitely was something that had been percolating for at least a few weeks, if not months, in Florida. A lot of former players had sort of turned on Mullen, had become disinterested in how he was running the program. I think it all stemmed a lot from how they performed last year in their bowl game against Oklahoma. That turned off a lot of people coming into this season. They had, a lot of potential. They were ranked high in the preseason polls. That didn't turn out well, and then it really went down fast. They got obliterated by Georgia. That loss at LSU really, they did not look all that engaged in that game. Going to South Carolina and getting blown out by the Gamecocks like that, not a very good South Carolina football team, was completely inexcusable. And then losing at Missouri on a 2-point conversion that Missouri ran to win the game was really kind of the last straw that people could have. So, and Scott Strickland, the AD, talked about this yesterday. Dan Mullen's a great play caller. I write about this later in the week. He's a phenomenal offensive mind. There's no doubt about that. He took Mississippi State to number 1 in the country. He had, back-to-back double-digit winning seasons his first 2 years at Florida after that program had really stalled. But the recruiting was just not there. They had recruited decently well. It wasn't the worst recruiting classes ever, but to compete with Georgia, to compete with Alabama and LSU and Texas A&M and all these emerging SEC schools, Florida was falling behind. And Mullen really didn't show a tremendous amount of interest in the recruiting part of it. And so I think that was really, other than, the words toxic culture were thrown around, that gets thrown around very often. But a lot of former players really hadn't bought into Mullen. That was a problem. And I think a lot of it stemmed from recruiting. You can call the best plays that you want to call, but if the other team is faster and stronger up front, it doesn't matter. So recruiting is the name of the game, and Dan Mullen was just not that great of a recruiter during his time at Florida.
Yeah, so what does it mean then for recruiting? They've got 11 commitments in the 2022 class. What are you hearing as far as who might stay and who might look elsewhere?
Yeah, as of this taping, 11 commitments. It's the lowest in the entire SEC. They had 12 yesterday. They lost their only player in the Rivals 100 on Monday morning, Isaiah Bond, a 4-star speedy receiver who was basically perfect for what Mullen wants to do in his offense. I don't think that the class is going to implode, though. And the reason I say this, it's almost being critical of Dan Mullen's recruiting. A lot of those guys have very other few options. Some can flip to Auburn, maybe. Some could flip to South Carolina. I think a lot are going to stay, though. Nick Evers, the quarterback commit, kind of said he's going to stick around and see what happens. Jaden Gibson, their star wide receiver, who's moving up in the next round of rankings, real special 6'4", 6'5" receiver. Reminds us of T. Higgins a little bit. He's a legacy at Florida. He had Georgia and South Carolina as his other two. It'll be interesting to see if Georgia makes a run at him. I think that could be a possibility. A lot of these other guys, I think, are going to sit back and see who gets hired. If Billy Napier comes in, I think everything will be fine. I don't think that a lot of people will look elsewhere. But they have a lot of building to do into this recruiting class. Only 11 commits. We're only a few weeks to the early signing period. Generally when a coach comes in a situation like this, there is this exact situation in recruiting. There's a lot of room to do things. I don't expect a lot of kids to back off of their pledges here, but that's also an indictment of this class is they see Florida as by far their best option, and they're going to stay hopeful that the new coaching staff wants to keep them in this class and then that they can go in there and kind of rebuild under a new regime.
Yeah, so what are you hearing then about the candidate to replace him? Who might come in? There's a lot of openings out there.
Yeah, yeah, and there's always smoke screens and coaching searches, and you always hear all the names, and then it turns out to be somebody else or someone emerges. But really, it seems like Billy Napier, the Louisiana coach, is priority number 1 and 2. I think that's the name that they want. I've heard Mario Cristobal. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see if Miami opens here in the next few weeks. If Mario Cristobal is a major candidate for that job. Since he is from the area and has a tremendous amount of connections to that program. I think Luke Fickell's name has been thrown around, but the rumors on Luke Fickell is that he and his family don't necessarily want to leave the Midwest. Certainly not crazy about it. That's why I think he's a sort of a long shot at USC, even though USC had pursued him pretty heavily. The name Bill O'Brien has been thrown around, Alabama's offensive coordinator, who was Penn State's coach and the coach of the Houston Texans. So I think there are definitely very viable candidates. And this is a conversation I've had with some people over the last 24 hours since Mullen was fired. Is I understand that Dan Mullen maybe been toxic and he had gotten rid of some coaches and coordinators, but was it to the precipice of where he couldn't have saved this? Could he is such an offensive mind. He is such a good play caller. Could he have not saved this? It seems like people felt that it couldn't be saved. So I think Billy Napier is the guy that Florida wants. I think they can go out and get him. It will be interesting to see how LSU plays out, though. I mean, all of these cards are all on the table now. Obviously, LSU is going after Jimbo Fisher, Lincoln Riley, Mel Tucker. If they strike out on those three, and it looks like the first two might be strikeouts already, and Mel Tucker has a huge contract extension at Michigan State, Billy Napier has made it clear he would want the LSU job too. So there's a lot of stuff moving parts behind the scenes, but when the Florida job opens, that's a very, very high profile job, probably top 10 in the country, if not higher. And so there will be many candidates that will put their name in the ring to get that spot.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. A lot of dominoes going to fall here in the next couple of months. So, Adam, thanks for your time. I'll remind everybody they can go to gatorsterritory.com to follow this story, and obviously always at rivals.com. Thanks again, Adam.
All right. Thanks, Dave.